What did I teach you?
Look, no, you're saying number one.
I can't hear you.
You're number one. Peace. Can everybody hear me? Just type it into the chat. Let me know. Islam. I hope everybody's well. As well as we can be in such dire straits. Considering all of the shit that's going on. You know what I mean? Word. Hope all is well. Let me know if anybody has any questions about anything before we get into everything. You know, a lot popping off as usual. Just want us to be aware and abreast and just, touch on, ask any questions about anything before you want to get into it. Or if you have any comments you want to make, you can do so now. Word. Hold up, I'm just pulling something up real quick. Yes, here we go. No, that's not it. Always be bugging. Yeah, okay. We're good to go with that. But yeah, anybody got any questions about anything before we wanted to get into it? One of the things that's going on is well, I'll show you right now. Basically, most of Europe is on fire. Canada's on fire. Spain, I'm gonna show you images of that. That's basically on fire now. These fires are not natural. As you know, they're always being set by these people. Parts of Patagonia is on fire. You know, so they doing what they be always doing, which again is trying to destroy humanity and plunge us all into never-ending wars, which is, part of their ways of doing business. Another thing has happened. Unfortunately, it was blocked in the Senate, then it came back, then it got blocked again. So it looks like they're going to pass that NDAA thing, which is basically going to allow Netanyahu, who is being kicked out of his own government, who's on trial in his own government. Like, that's the wild shit. All of these people are criminals. He's on trial in his own country for not only stealing money, but appropriating funds to do his own, illegal shit over there. He's an international war criminal. He's a genocidal maniac. You know what I'm saying? But because Mr. Milikowski is a part of the long-term small hat junta blackmail agenda that's been going on, you could really say since 1781, but let's be modest to say since about the time that they murked Kennedy. This has now reached the foment in which now I knew when they was going to try to say they was going to stop the aid, they was going to try to flip it into another situation, which is if you're going to give them money, give them money. But these people are now trying to embed Israeli foreign agent in charge, basically, of the military, that will be able to bypass basically anything the Congress or anything the National Defense Agency or the intelligence agency said. Basically create a fake agency, which again is illegal under Chevron. All of this is illegal. Create a fake agency for this person to basically sit in as, to create and bypass any legislation that constitutionally is ratified for the country to follow. So everyone who did this and voted for this are blatant traitors to the country, blatantly. Like, this is no next level treason. Like, they would never integrate their army with Haiti or Russia or China or even Ukraine for that matter, or anybody, or Saudi Arabia or anybody else in the world. So at the same time that this country is literally falling apart, they want to create a circumstance where they're going to allow this to take place so that way they can wage active war against the rest of us. Because if the people here ain't with it, then they can't really get nothing off. So the only way for them to survive is to create a circumstance where they have embedded themselves like a tick or like a parasite or like a leech firmly inside of the actual government. And all of these people voted for it. The white people, the black people, the Indian people, because all of them niggas is what you call it, is what do you say, are compromised. So they're all a part of the agenda to keep everything not only the way it is, but make it worse. Because 90, they did a whole poll the other day. They said 90%, 90 to 95% of the world, as well as the people in the US, is totally against any involvement with these people. So what do? They go the extra mile to make sure that now you'll never be able to uninfest yourself with this lice that is now a part of your so-called military. So that means then when it comes time to deploying soldiers, if they want to use soldiers, they can bypass the Israeli military and just send everybody over here to go do what they want to do. So the real question is, what are the people going to do? Are they going to follow this? Are they going to continue to make this happen? This is also happening at the same time. The flock and the AI data center thing is off the chain. Niggas is not having either. So what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to integrate that through military intelligence, because again, the whole process is to destroy the country. That's where they're going. That's where this whole thing is going. So the goal is to destroy the country and force everybody into these fake 15-minute cities that they think everybody is basically going to be herded into one way or the other. So again, the real question is, what are the men, what are the women going to do in response to all of this? How are they going to establish themselves outside of this obvious tyranny and obvious treason that's going down? This is also happening so that way they can figure out a way to keep this guy in office for another term, to make him the first term. So when they said he was the last US president, what they're trying to say is he's the last one before they eliminate the whole branch anyway. Because remember, only the president is supposed to have control of the military. So this piece of shit basically decided now that he's going to basically hand over the military to whoever is the Israeli liaison officer that's going to now occupy this fake seat in the Pentagon. This is after the Pentagon said that the number one enemy and the number one threat to United States intelligence is these people. So what do? They go and they integrate with these people even more. So, like I said, it's pretty much a done deal at this point. And when it comes time to the midterms, you're not going to be able to vote your way out of this or any of that. So what they're really striving to do is create a full tilt towards an active civil war where people actively now start rebelling against their government so they can actually break it up, which is what they want to do in the first place. Break it up into 4 different districts, which would then make it easier for them to manage. So the question is, are all of the people in the country going to go along with this? You know what I'm saying? Because, like I said, everybody is basically up in arms about the same situation, and it's not going to get no better. It's only going to get worse from here, because that's the goal. They've already bombed out. They've already bombed out most of Israel itself. Like they've sacrificed their own people. You know what I'm saying? They literally sacrificed their own people. So that is the obligation that now the sacrifice they've made in order for them now to start to bring all of those people here to create a new upper class. That's why they wanted to get rid of the middle class so that way they can create a new upper class in which all of these people are there. So who helped get them in there? The people that they refer to as the evangelical Christian white majority, who also represent most of the psychopathic, rich pedophile class that was a part of the whole Epstein operation to begin with. So this is really what it is. You know what I'm saying? We talked about this for the past couple of years when they was basically making Donnie look like he was the savior. And all the time while I was doing it, I was telling you this nigga's a maniac. You know what I mean? And he's a egomaniac on top of that. So the fact that they're probably using one version of him against the other and vice versa, this is all that. So all of the talks about the 5D chess and all of that and the white hats and the secret military and all that, like the only way out like that, like I said, is the military itself going into active revolt against any of this. But this is why they've been firing all of these people ever since. You know what I mean? Every week you hear about a new person in the military leaving and this, and that. This is why they've been kidnapping all of the scientists and these types of people. This is why they also shut down CERN, because they can't really fight this war on two fronts. Because at the same time, all of this is happening. This is making people like China and exactly the QAnon stuff and all that, which I told you was a part of Operation Veritas and Operation Trust that started out with the Soviets and then got flipped over into a small hat situation. So Operation Zephyr. So they've been quietly making this, but all this is done. It has just made uh, the United States weaker, because now that the fox is in the hen house, this means the overall destruction of the country is full mentally coming within. Because on the wings of these people doing this, you got all of these so-called democratic socialists who are saying any and everything to get into office, to do whatever it is they want to do, which then creates another junta. You see what I'm saying? Of which now the communists are acting like they're against it, but they're also with it at the same token. Because remember, communism, feminism, socialism, nihilism, all of these things were created by these people. You know what I'm saying? Who are operating from an occult basis. You know what I mean? Who are operating in service of an unseen God that does not really exist outside of the avarice that lies within their hearts, and the fact that they have created a world of perpetual strife. They've created a world where they can be perpetual victims, which then in their mind gives them the right to create full war against everybody else that doesn't agree to be their slaves. This is not just an ideology, this is the religion that these people follow. So it's not like there's any reasoning with them. It's not like there's any speaking to them directly. It's not like none of that exists, because they exist in a vacuum, and that vacuum is based upon how many lives they can sacrifice, blood sacrifice, to this God that they worship. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to play this real quick. um my brother, one of my Facebook friends, brother Vance, sent me this. Give me a second. One second. Okay. Wait 1 second. Okay. Alrighty.
There's so many clones coming into Europe, right? That would mean there's even potentially clones in this room right now. There must be so many.
80% of the Caucasian population.
80% of the Caucasian population are clones. So, it's not about racism. So also,
No, it's nothing to do with race.
is there any science? Is there any science that you could have a clone in your life, that you're in love with a clone? Like I know a lot of people say that they don't think, they don't have internal dialogue. Is there anything you've come across?
That's exactly what I was about to say. So Dolores Cannon did the work on this. So Benjamin Franklin also wrote about this, saying that there was a dire need to fill America with Caucasian people. So for whatever reason, they to do that. Yeah, they say that there is no inner dialogue, and they called it whitewashing. But Dolores Cannon believed that 80% of the population that look like me can't trace their family tree back past really the 1800s with any accuracy, and we refer to them today as NPCs.
Wow.
She said they were soulless. I don't think anything living is soulless. I think we all have a connection. But it was called whitewashing, for want of a better expression. And it was to make out, and they did this at the World's Fairs and Expositions. They would have on display people from indigenous tribes, and they would bring children from Africa, put them on display, and they were labelled as primitive and savage.
Wow.
And this was specifically to dumb down and remove history. And this is connected to the Moors from Africa, who built some of the most beautiful architecture in the world. They wanted everyone to consider them as primitive, and Tartaria was removed for a similar reason. So we would consider Moscow, Russia, to be behind, a little bit backward, and that was another part of it. So that's what happened. And what I'd suggest people do is watch the second film that Alice Guy produced, which is on YouTube. It's called Midwife to the Upper Classes, and you'll see an example there of where the middle class couple come to buy a baby.
Honest to that brother for sharing his experience and going in and bringing that to everybody, which is great because again, it just solidifies what the prophet already knew, what he already was telling us, which is, he gonna make the European tell the truth, which he is, and it's cool. It's a good thing that we get to actually see the foment of these things coming to pass. You know what I'm saying? Because what that does is it gets us in a better position to accept the fact that everything they told us we was crazy for doing the knowledge tool is actually what actually the stuff has been going on. Now, outside of using the word Tartaria, which a lot of people, believe is a fake word, a trigger word, even though there's mad maps and stuff with the name on it, a rose by any other name is, what I mean, is still what it is. So we should not get so caught up in the semantics of what people calling things now based upon how the misunderstanding goes to everything that these people have been doing. And the goal, like I said, is to keep everybody at a state where nobody works together to be able to root these people out or root these things out. You notice that he said that, most of these so-called Europeans can't really define themselves or have a history outside of the 1800s, because the farther back of that time you go, you're dealing with melanated people whom these people's names were adopted from. They became slave names when they were betrothed or gifted to the Slavs, who then used those names as means to create a buffer class that they could then use to basically destabilize all the rest of us. So remember, these people came from people who look like this. You dig what I'm saying? Like, these pictures ain't just from nowhere. They didn't just make these pictures up and we're just, out here just following behind some sort of fake story. Like, no, these people depicted themselves. Our ancestors depicted these things as they were. And some of our ancestors, because they were the ones who were involved in the domestication of these things, were put into circumstances by which they could no longer sustain themselves. You know what I mean? And in not being able to do that as the main power, they agreed to, in a sense, strip elements of their divine power and give it to the avarice that existed within them. So that way they could create a world where these things would be able to have control and rule over everybody, no matter who and what they decided themselves they was going to be, you know? And that's the real. Nobody wants to accept the fact that this history that everybody is talking about, and because they've watched movies, like, the real reason why these people feel that they know all of this history about the Odyssey and these things or whatever is because these people were given this history, you know what I'm saying? Literally by people who were and still are using them. And now the time has come where their usefulness has been used up. So now they're literally striving to wipe them out. Because the irony is that these things, like the small hat mafia and these type of people, they don't consider themselves as white. They don't think that they're WIGHT white. They think that they are a separate race. They think that they are the same people who was walking around the desert calling themselves Hebrews and all that. Like, they really believe that. Even though all of the data, all of the history, all of the things that exist in the real world actually show the exact opposite about them. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they was really from where they say that they from now, they would be able to go there and live there with no problem, really. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Arabs ain't even really from there either, but they exist there. You know what I'm saying? Because they were implanted there, and they were a version of them that were used to soften the rest of our people up and displace all of the so-called Africans that's out there now. That's why none of the Africans that's in the countries that they in is really from the countries that they from. That's just the place that they've been in the past 80 to 100 and maybe 10 years. Prior to that, all of them was somewhere else. So all of those records that you see them locked up in Timbuktu and in Ethiopia and places like that, like, all of those records and a lot of that history and all that stuff, that is combined stuff that was preserved from before all of this switched up. Because there's a lot of people right now in Ethiopia, they can't read Geese. They don't know how to read that. They can read Greek though. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of people in the so-called Arabic that's Christians and stuff, but they don't know how to read Aramaic. They don't speak a lot of Aramaic. The real Aramaic ones that you'll find in certain places, they don't they persecute them to death. They try to kill them to death. You understand? Because they don't want nobody passing that on. Just like when you look at this Strasbourg tapestry right here, you'll see that all of these wild people is coming here. These Moors is defending their castles because they're the ones that live in the castles. But then you look here, you see this Moorish lady right here. She got white hair or blonde hair, just like this man right here. He got reddish, you see what I'm saying, hair, but he's mad dark. This dude got a red beard. You see what I'm saying, with mad straight hair. These are the Merovingian stocks that existed for so long or whatever, and were eventually, like I said, moved, wiped out, had to intermarry with other peoples and all of that just to stay alive. This is their history. This is what they have always done. They've never been able to live in peace with no one. You know what I'm saying? And so when they use us for genetic material, so that way they can intermarry and interbreed with one another, this is them finding ways to keep the recessive aspects of their genetics from totally inhibiting their line moving forward. So everything is a genetic test to mongrelize, what they call mongrelize us. So in the distorted history that they've given us, again, that has always come from somebody else. Like, think about it. For the past 50 to 80 years, everything that we know from history on was written by these people who have now totally invested the actual upper echelons of government and corporations and all of that. Because they're all of that is the deep state. When they keep talking to you about the deep state this, the deep state that, that's the corporations. That's everybody, you see what I'm saying, that has a vested interest in poisoning and destroying the planet. There are no good corporations, you know what I'm saying, regards to what they say or do, especially once they, maybe when they first start out, but once they get monopolized and taken over, that's it. They become something evil, which is there to destroy. You understand? To poison, to murder. A corpse, right? What's the abbreviation of corporation? Is corpse, right? What's a corpse? Something that's dead. These people are dead. They only exist in a state of perpetual death and degradation. So anything that they can get our people to adopt that is detrimental to their own, to our people's own survival, is a boon for them. That is a win for them. That is how they're able to manipulate and move forward in their life. Because if we are just living on our own and being self-sufficient on our own and creating all of the innovations on our own, they are losing, because they are hardwired, you know what I'm saying? Hardwired within their own DNA structure to always create problems for everybody else in the world, because they have a God complex. They believe that everything on earth and everybody on earth is supposed to be them, because this is what Sabat Sebi told them. This is what the black nobility training that was given to them. This is what they tended to believe, because that is the only way that they themselves could exist in a manner outside of the cave. The only way they could exist is by doing that. So remember, when you come from a cave people and a cave mentality, you are coming from a mentality of there is never enough. Everything I get, I must have. Anything I get, I must dominate. You know what I'm saying? That's why rape of children, homosexuality, these things are important to them. You understand? Like, there's a method to the madness. The more they let pedophiles off, right? The more they're sending a subconscious psychological message to the populace that this is a protected class, that you could do whatever type of crime you want, but if you do this, you'll get less time. So if you're selling drugs, you're going to get 20 years. If you're doing this, you're going to get 20 years. If you know what I'm saying? But if you rape a child, you be able to basically get off with good behavior. Like, this is what they're doing. That's why in prison, that is the only place that these people actually really get retribution and actually get punished. You see what I'm saying? This is a pathology that is baked into Western society. And now at its collapse, they are striving to maintain a substrata of awareness by which this becomes the identity, the accepted identity. Like, If everybody would have rebelled against the whole Epstein situation, like when it was actually happening, which a lot of people did. However, at the same token, the fact that nobody really went ham and went crazy, it created a it was a psychological test to see, oh, we could still get away with this. They still going to work. They still doing this. They're not actually standing up. So they look at that as you agreeing to it. And anybody that is not really, you know what I'm saying, moving forward or pushing it to the forefront is basically okay with it. So you could be online arguing with somebody, and this person that you arguing with would rather argue with you or against you about your opinion on something. But then when you bring it back to, well, yeah, but all of these niggas is basically doing the same thing. It's like crickets. They don't have no real response for that. So they got to keep it in the gutter. They got to keep these niggas thinking lowbrow. They got to keep them accepting as much deviancy as possible. That is the way. It's like a fly. The fly can't just eat food. It has to vomit on everything that it ingests in order for it to be able for it to digest it. So that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with carrion. You're dealing with dead vessels who worship a dead God, who want to take that dead God and make you a willing human sacrifice to it. You understand what I'm saying? This is much more than just a ideology. It is a actual destruction of the human psyche. You understand what I'm saying? And so these people will do whatever, especially to keep this nigga in play, because he's totally, at this point, must be totally compromised. And so anybody else that gets in is probably going to be just as compromised. But remember, the entire structure is illegal from what they did in 1871 to establish this. But they every year, every some odd years, they do something to push it a little bit further, a little bit further. So they wait to the 250th year of your so-called independence to then bind you to another country. They wouldn't bind themselves to England, and they came from that. So you gotta understand, these people, if you call them that, their main goal, like I said, is the overall destruction of everything. Not because they want to see it destroyed, but because the more blood sacrifice they get, the more they feel like it's moving them closer to the rise of their so-called Messiah, which does not exist. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't exist. It's just another means to justify this overarching evil that they are all part of, and they've infected everybody with elements of it. There's no melanated people at the top that's striving to look out for any of us. You understand? And the more they'd say, oh, well, as long as there's a melanated face or a so-called black face in there, we in those rooms. Like, we're not in those rooms. Any niggas that's in them rooms with them people are doing what those people do. You are not chosen for your individuality. You are chosen for your ability to go along with everything that they're doing. And the agenda, like I said, is to destroy the psyche of the children, because the children are the future. So you can lay the whole treasonous thing that just happened at the feet of the so-called boomers, because they're the only ones still watching CNN and that type of shit. You know what I'm saying? They're the only ones that still believe any of the stuff that these people are talking about. They're the ones who made sure that the generations after us didn't have nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, they didn't pass anything down to us. They didn't even raise us. You know what I'm saying? Like, they didn't even raise us. We raised ourselves. So what makes us all Americans is the understanding that we're on our own. No one is going to come to save us. Once we accept that, really, really, truly accept it, I think we could move on. But they've been putting it in our face for centuries, like I was showing here. Like, this is what they call the Sennacherib, which is also called the Kepara, right? Which is basically the dung beetle. The reason why the dung beetle was revered in ancient Kemet was because it was a constant worker, and it would take dung, right, and literally mold it into a perfect sphere. You understand? A perfect sphere, not like a half circle or oblong. Every dung beetle would basically create a perfect sphere of it and be able to use it for its advantage in building its um its home. You understand what I'm saying? So taking something that is wasteful or that is waste itself, and then being able to use that, right, and turn it into a geometric shape, and turn it into a diametric shape, a geometric side, which is basically a platonic solid. It allows them to be revered as one of the most manifesting things impossible, because they use it not only to feed, right, but they also use it to cool off in the sun in temperatures that reach above 120 degrees, where anything else would melt and burn up. You see what I'm saying? Because they can't chew solid food. You see what I'm saying? So what they do is that they would squeeze out and drink the liquid out of the dung itself. You understand? But specifically, they would only take the dung from animals that eat vegetables, plant life, herbivores, because that would have the most water trapped in it. You see what I'm saying? This is how ingenious the things that Allah created are. And then, like I said, it makes them into these neat balls, right? Also, the more spherically correct the ball is, the more likely the dung beetle male is able to get a mate. So so the women judge whether or not they should be with him based on how good of a circle this thing can create. It's amazing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's really, really amazing. And then what they do is they bury it, right? In which then they lay the eggs inside of it. So then that way, once it calcifies and all that, there's enough nutrients on the inside of it that allows it to move up to then maintain the species. And these things can fly. You know what I'm saying? But they do most of they work on the ground, which means they have an understanding of what it means to be grounded. So you see the symbolic nature as to why, the ancestors use this as a representation of resurrecting one from the lowest aspect of itself to the highest. Indeed, master builder. So we then took that as being part of the ancient Comedian culture and put it, like I said, into all of the other things that we were using to build to show our majesty and our understanding of life, death, and resurrection, which is what the cartouche, i.e., the coat of arms, is. Look at the coat of arms, how it's positioned, and then look at the position of the so-called beetle. It's identical. So while we think this is a knight's helmet in there, no, that's actually a real a scarab, a Sennacherib, a Caprata. You see what I'm saying? A beetle. See the crown? See the legs? And then, like you said, we exist on the inside coming up, which is why the coat of arms is the way it is. Just like the Pope's coat of arms. See what I'm saying? With Saint Corvinus and the bear with the shell. Now, all of this is ancient. Everything is ancient except for this. This is the part that they added at the end. This represents the little white phallus with the black tip. This is the only thing that was added by them. Everything else was, all of the rest of this shit goes back to when we was in control of all of that. When they came in, they put the pitiful white phallus at the bottom. That was their contribution to it. You understand? They've built nothing. All they have done is just taken what you've done, put their face on it, made you forget that you had anything to do with it, and then marketed it back to you so that way you can look at it through their eyes and not your own. You understand what I'm saying? Symbolism. This is what they learned the most from us. And because now we are at such a low level of understanding of how these symbolism is worked and used against us, we keep falling into the same traps. And so the least of us, yes, indeed, reverse symbolism. So the least of us begin to embody them and then reduce our understanding of self to accommodate them. And the reason why they do it so much in that case, you know what I mean, now is again because of money. And because of the fact that they don't believe that their power, our people, have any power. Because our people still believe that we were imported from somewhere else. So deep down, there's an element of the so-called power structure, especially of melanated people, who believe then that, well, if we're not really from here, then if I vote against this place or I do things that are basically treasonous, although I'm not really saying I'm doing that, I'm just going along to get along, then technically I'm not really working against myself or my people because this is not really our place anyway. This is why they marry foreign. This is why they'll bend over and, let these people, do what they're going to do to them. Because deep down, they don't really feel like they have any power to do anything else. Even though everything else in the universe is showing us that the true power is coming from us. That's the irony. That's the irony of the whole thing. That's why like I said, all of the movies suck. All of the TV shows suck. All of the stuff that they're putting out suck because they cannot inspire any goodness in anyone anymore. See, they used to be able to do that. They used to be able to have the distractions in such a manner that you could disavow certain things all the way. You see what I'm saying? In order to have a good time or to escape in the fictions and stuff that they created. But now, because the agenda is permeated through everything, they have literally tied you. Think about it. For a whole segment of your life, they actually made you hate the place you were born. When millions upon millions upon millions of people risk their lives every day just to live in a box over here, to literally breathe the air that you have over here, they literally will kill themselves, sell themselves. Really think about that. Would do all of that to come here to take your position. Why? Because for the past 80 years, they've convinced you that everything about America, which has nothing to do the America that they got you thinking is America, is actually the United States. So they got you hating the United States. Got you hating America when it's really the United States. It's really the parasite that's in America that you hate. It ain't the actual country because you are an American. So that means if you hate America, you hate yourself. And the self-hate is evident. You see what I'm saying? Because if you hate yourself enough to hate, that's like you having a crib, and because you don't like how the drapes is, you basically just torch and destroy the entire house. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how they got you. That's how they got our people. They have literally brainwashed us through things, again, like Pan-Africanism and these things, because it was the way for them to be able to get you to get out of your seat. And then once you sat up and got out, they were actually able to come in and sit down and change the drapes and change everything the way that they wanted it to be. And then charge you and I rent. And then if you say anything about it, you are basically what? You hating, you not really from here, go back to Africa, right? And because you were inundated in the last 80 to 70 to 80 years with this whole story about you being imported as property of somebody else who, at the time that this allegedly was happening, couldn't read and couldn't write, didn't have any real infrastructure of their own, couldn't navigate, couldn't do none of this shit. But yet and still, they're better than you because they built the country the way that it was supposed to be, even though you was more in control and had more land and had more control in it when than they ever did. Yet you are still being told by people that look like you that you're not from here and that you need to go back to some place you ain't never been before, that you ain't never been, when all of them people is basically now imitating you, coming over here, trying to be what they see you being. It's amazing. It's one big con, and everybody is benefiting from it except us. So you gotta ask yourself, you gotta accept to yourself that this is what it is, not what I want it to be, but this is what it's become due to the apathy and the selling out of people who look like us. And I think that's what we don't really accept. Like, we understand, like when we talk about the boule and the sellouts and these people, like we understand it to a degree, but I don't think we really understand how institutional that whole ideology, that whole world outlook really is. We don't really get it. We think we do, but I don't think we really understand how deeply institutional this understanding, that way of thinking, is amongst our community. That is the way of thinking that will have people in Jamaica literally bleaching their skin, right? That will have them at the same time selling their entire country basically out to China, who basically own like huge swaths of this country, you know what I mean? Of that country. You know what I'm saying? But then if we say something about that, then it's like, oh, well, you just Yankees, y'all just talking about this. Y'all ain't, it's like, yeah, but y'all got your own country. Why would you sell it to these people who not only don't like you, but are exploiting it as much as possible for their benefit? Oh, well, they got money. That's what we have accepted as that's just the way it is. Like, these things are the reason why the younger generation doesn't respect the older generations, because all they've seen niggas do is sell out. You understand what I'm saying? Like, that's all they have actually witnessed in their world. So when we step back and look at this systemic epidemic of apathy, this is what it's returned to. I know over the years everybody showed pictures of crests, but there's an actual way to read them. You understand? So I was talking about Jamaica. In Jamaica, one of the common names in Jamaica, I'm just using this as an example. I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just using that because we were talking about it. Is Dexter. Like I knew mad Dexters for some reason growing up, and a lot of them were from the island. Dexter is actually the left side comes the name is the name of the left side of the stand by what we say. Excuse me, stand by the left side of the actual crest. The right side of the crest going down, the Dexter also goes up. So whatever's on the upside, right? Always then when you look on this side, you're supposed to look down, right? That's called the sinister side, the left side. The honor point is whatever is in the midpoint because this whole thing is based on a tree of life stance. So the Dexter chief and the sinister chief. So in this, that would be the two pillars, which would represent in their science, Yashin and Boaz, right? The honor point in the middle, that's where this head would be, right? The fez point is the heart. That's why fezzes are red, right? Then the nombril or the navel part, that would represent the midheaven, which would also represent the what they call the middle passage. Then the base is again whatever's at the bottom section of that. You see what I'm saying? So it all has an order because all of this represents, like I said, the tree of life. Because this is all Kabbalistic symbolism. Matter of fact, I'll show you. And our people have compassion. Like our people also have been bred to have compassion for everybody else except their own. You'll have people just defend shit that they know is whack or is just not cool just because you as another melanated person is coming out against it. You know what I'm saying? Like they will literally defend shit that they know is obtuse and is negative for us all, but they will support it. They will go at it and stump hard for it just because you is not with it. Meanwhile, these crackers can come out and do and say whatever they're gonna say and do whatever they're gonna do, and they keep it moving, and they don't do nothing to step to them. You know what I'm saying? It's really sad. So you see what I'm talking about with the tree of life, right? So this is the tetragrammaton. That's the front side of it. The back side of that in their religion, in their occult religion, is referred to as the Qliphoth, which is the tree of death. Let's see if I can pull that up too. So one is the public side, the other is the private side. You know what I mean? people who are into the occult, people into Crowley and them type of people, into that, Manly P. Hall, Kenneth Grant, to a degree, Life is Levy, others like that, they deal with this heavy. The enemy itself also deals with this heavy. This is how they're able to create their worship. You understand? Because they believe that this makes them divine. They believe that the more they integrate the negative over the positive, the more they control the physical world. Because their positive is our negative. Our negative is their positive. You dig? That's how they work. In tandem together, I should say. Let me get this 1 second. Yes, John D as well. He was one of them as well. He was basically the father of what became MI5, MI6, and all of that. You know what I'm saying? He's where you get the magic squares from, or the modern interpret of the magic squares. His actual code name was 007. That's where you get the James Bond 007 thing from. That actually came from him. That's what he was coded as in the monarchy. So you see what I'm saying with the tree, right? Let me move it over. This is what your enemy deal with every day. All the rituals you talking about, all of the zodiacal stuff that they using that they convinced you is fake and it doesn't mean nothing, and all of this. Anytime somebody telling you that knowledge don't mean nothing, they running a game on you. Anytime somebody is discounting something that is actually relevant, they running a game on you. They are an unwilling, they either are willing or an unwilling agent. Because at this point, nothing can actually be discounted at this point. The agenda is so rampant to mischaracterize you and everything that look like you, to always have your image in some sort of opposite view of how it was or how it really is. And it's being fomented by people who look like you. So they believe that their God exists in the three levels above this, which is the Ein Sof, and the Ein Sof Or, right? Then it's the Keter, which is the brain or the mind, which then goes down into Hakma, into then Bina, and then meets in the middle of Doth. Now, Doth would represent what? The honor point, right? The middle chief, which is what? Keter. On either side, which is what they refer to as the two pillars, which again is the pillar of Yashin and Boaz, right? This side represents the side of severity, the left side, the side that you give from. The right side represents the side of mercy. You see what I'm saying? Excuse me. The side of Bina is the side of severity where you receive things. The right side, which is the side of mercy, right, or hakma, as they say with the hard H, is the side of mercy. So that's why there's always two pillars in any place that you walk into on earth. If it's a structure, you see what I'm saying? This is actually the structure of how all houses are made. So everything in that understanding to them is a doorway. So as you see, the fez would represent the Teferet, right? Which then sits right above the physical world. The physical world is at the bottom, which is Malkut in the tree of life. In the tree of death is Lilith. Why? Because Lilith was the one that rebelled against the reorganization of everything as it moves forward. You see what I'm saying? So when the enemy is doing so, when they talk about they doing root work on you, like in the so-called melanated community, they got where people be putting roots on one another. They say they be doing root work. The root work is the path work. The path work is the pathways. These are the pathways and how they try to create the rituals to line people up by the numbers. And again, it's all based upon how they access the pathways to open this into a door to get you to walk through, so that way you can become the latest sacrifice, or I can become the latest sacrifice for whatever these deviants want to do. So the actual the actual crest that you see on these family things, now when you look at them, you can now read them the same way you would read a book, or the same way you would read a picture. You understand? That's why they were all encoded like that, because each family was doing its own version of work against the other. See what I'm saying? Because you had melanated beings or people who were coming from a different place, like Europa, which again is named after a melanated goddess of ancient Phoenicia, right? To do this work against everybody else, against the rest of us. And so we, all over the world, as we began to fall out with one another and have all of these problems with one another and get caught up with one another in all of these different wars and provisions, that allowed everybody else to come up. You dig? That's the issue. We're always putting other people before our own people. And then when we say this, right, we're supposed to have some sort of universal, universal consciousness, right, with other people that only see us as a means of coming up. Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was one of the key strategists, he wrote a book called The Grand Chessboard. He was one of the key strategists in the breaking up of what became the Soviet Union, as well as counterintelligence against the American populace. And one of the things that he was quoted as saying was that the only way to keep both the so-called African and the so-called melanated being born in America would be to keep them from uniting. And the way that they decided to do that was by creating circumstances by which we would not be able to connect. So one of the ways that they decided to do that was to go with the out of Africa theory, so that way us over here would always be under the perception that we were always the minor version, that we're not a complete people. psychologically. You understand? Even though we put in the work that has made this country into what it is today without anybody else coming to our aid to do that. There's never been a document, as much as they talk about slave trades and slave people coming over here and selling us and stuff, there's never been a story that you have ever heard of anybody from an African nation, from a Caribbean nation, right, coming over here to free us or help us. You see what I'm saying? In it with arms, with any of that, with their own government. And if there is, they don't highlight that. What you do here is people from the Americas now, both mainland America and the islands, gearing up and moving and going to places like Ethiopia during the war and fighting with them. You can find that. There's documentations of when the war started and Mussolini and them was moving in, the European wars was moving in on Victor Emmanuel and them and Ras Alula, and the then Empress was fighting. You see what I'm saying? To keep Ethiopia free and all of that, Abyssinia free. You had hundreds, if not thousands, of melanated men, well-to-do, doctors, lawyers, niggas who wasn't even soldiers, signing up to go over there and fight to keep so-called Abyssinia, which became Ethiopia, free, as well as others, like when the whole Angola thing was happening. Niggas from over here traveling over there to do that. They didn't travel over there to assume the identity of the so-called Ethiopian. They didn't travel over there to create a circumstance by which they could create a byproduct, a byway that they would be able to basically absorb the identity of the native-born Ethiopian. Nobody did that. Nobody went to assume the identity or take what the so-called Ethiopian had. No, they went to go fight and if need be, die with them. Is that going to happen over here? We'll see. We will see. On your screen, is a image of, on the left is William Shakespeare. On in the middle is Aristotle. And on the end is Richard the Lionheart, the person who created the Latin kingdom of Jerusalem. As you can see, all so-called Europeans, and all also melanated. There's a brother on, I think it's Facebook. He got a joint called, I think his name is Shiloh Israel. Check him out. He's dope. Yeah. So this is what I'm saying. Like, all of the proof of who the original Europeans that we was dealing with is, yes, the movie Kingdom of Heaven, which is one of the best. I think that was one of the last great period piece movies of our generation. And I don't think it get enough burn. But I think that was the last great one for that generation. After that, that was like the bookend to Gladiator. And like I said, these movies ain't totally accurate, but they're accurate enough that there was still a story of heroism and so-called right and wrong. This new era we're in, we're not supposed to have, you're not supposed to know the difference between right and wrong because there is no good. You see what I'm saying? It's only a gray area. That's what they want you to that's where they want you to constantly stay. You always in the gray area. There's no real, good guys. Everybody is basically corrupt in some way. That's all mind control. That's all set up for you to never have a means to follow your higher self, because there's always a cop out. There's always a reason. There's always a reason to sell out. There's always a reason not to rise above your base nature. It's dehumanizing, but that's what they want. So none of these organizations that promoted Pan-Africanism, the upward mobility of melanated people in America, the affluent communities, fraternities of that, none of these institutions were set up to maintain us in our natural state. They were all funded at some point in history by these people. All of them. You know what I'm saying? They all get funded from these people. So when you see the NAACP awards, when you see the BET awards, right? See the Essence awards, right? None of those organizations is owned by melanated people at the very, very top. And the ones that are receive their marching orders from these niggas. And when you look at what these so-called celebrities and these melanated people get actual awards for, you'll see exactly what I'm saying. Small hats were some of the earliest supporters of organizations like the NAACP, right? So you have a group of small hats referring to you as colored to keep it going. And in 2006, 2000 so-called 26, they still calling you colored. They ain't changed the name of the organization, nothing. They done changed Aunt Jemima like 3 times since this thing been set up. They got rid of her with the perm, took her off the bottle, put her back on the bottle, put the perm back, right? All within the span of this thing. But they still calling y'all colored and still giving you awards for what? Being colored. Because colored means what? It don't exist. Anything that is under color of law has no rights, does not exist. This is just facts. And we wonder why we still think. But then we watch these awards and these niggas literally fall on their knees for them. Fall on their knees, sucking these people's off for getting an award for making an image that makes you look like an animal. The so-called small hats were some of the earliest supporters of the organization of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and the Urban League, an organization founded in 1911 that helped settle so-called black individuals from the South in New York, SACAR, right? Henry Moskowitz, a so-called Jewish civil rights activist, helped to found the NAACP along with black activists like who? W.E.B. Du Bois and Ida B. Wells. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting that Ida B. Wells was out there and she was one of the main members and she was getting daily reports of them hanging original people, original men and women and children all up and down the South, right? So isn't it crazy now? Here we are, all the way in 2026. We got a dude with the last name Wells, right? Noah, who's thrown in the water, right? Whose last name is Wells. Well is also where you draw water from, right? And he allegedly has been mutilated and tortured, right? And all of that, had his throat ripped out, allegedly, right? And we are now in the midst of all of these so-called hangings and murderings of melanated people. Don't y'all find the timing of this just crazy? When all during the realm of the time of the Democrats and all of that was happening, where they was losing and they wasn't getting no burn, and when they was rounding up all of these immigrants and we not out there protesting, not doing nothing, letting them do what they need to do with them. You don't find it interesting that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we just get an explosion of all of this stuff right before they try to sign this whole thing, where these small hats now have jurisdiction over the military psychological operations going on. I don't see the timing of this is just kind of wow. I do. Nothing is by coincidence, especially when you're dealing with people who deal with long-term ritual sacrifice of our people, who inherited the hatred of our people by those so-called melanated Europeans that came over here and used them as beasts of burden in a perpetual war against us due to the freedoms and the exercise of rights and all of that stuff that we naturally had over here. They want to make it seem like we were so lovey-dovey with one another and we was always just so supportive and all of that. And that wasn't it, man. Our people was been slaughtering each other for a long time, yo. And it's only now that we're starting to realize that that slaughter was a part of the overall programming that was given to these people by those people who wanted them to help, who needed help to help displace us over here. And then they took those stories and flipped them into other situations and other versions of what was happening. So that way we always look at our story through what their lens is. Like when we speaking about the Maya, the people who they refer to as the Maya, like just like the people they refer to as the Geechee. You know what I'm saying? Geechee is the name of the river. You understand? Maya was the name of the river. You understand what I'm saying? Those are two different things. Creek was the name of the river. So one of the ways that they were able to take control of the land and use people against each other was by, again, misnomering people. That was another form of warfare. Misnomering everyone. Calling everybody the name of something that was nearby instead of referring to them as what they were. You understand? So when we look at stuff like this, the mestizo Siberians who themselves say that they're white, right? They want to be white, but then they want to be indigenous at the same time. Like, I don't know how y'all get to do that. But then when we make the record straight and try to clarify the record, say, no, well, y'all niggas is like this because y'all came over here with these people. Y'all niggas is really Basques. That's why all y'all look the same. That's why all y'all act the same. That's why y'all have this disdain and hatred for us. When the so-called revolution went down in Haiti, what happened? In Haiti, what happened? Everybody came up. You know what I'm saying? One piece of yeast levels up the whole loaf. So when they freed themselves, they didn't just leave themselves free. They went and made sure everybody on the island was free. And then what happened? They got some mestizo white man who wasn't even down for any of the fighting, wasn't even there. He came from Connecticut, brought him over there, and convinced the Dominicans that they need to reassociate themselves with the Spaniards because that's who they most should favor, and they should separate themselves from the melanated people. Who gave him the money? Who paid for him to come over here and spread that lie and then get it to the point where they all agree? Same thing happened in Argentina. Same thing happened in Cuba. Same thing happened in these people just come and then they rebel. Same thing happened in Mexico with the Mestizo Revolution. After what's his name? Zapata and the rest of them niggas was fighting for their own freedom to get slavery and all of that out. What happened? The Mestizo Revolution came and created a whole nother caste system, put all the melanated people at the bottom. This keeps happening. And it's always fostered by the same people. Look at here. So what they want you to believe is that these people, these dark people right here, they trying to say that these is mestizo Mexicans who painted themselves black. That's what they believe now. These is mestizo Mexicans who painted themselves black, and this is why they doing that. But who are they sacrificing? Who are they killing? These are invaders. These are the people that was invading and was getting shut down. Here go another one. They say that the mestizo Spaniards brought with them Negro slaves, right? And then the Negro slaves came and they had to all be killed. There wasn't even. Let me tell you something, man. 15. Remember, they didn't start using the word Indian in lieu of Moorish until 1621. So if this is I-537, these is all Moors they talking about. Because who was calling the Moors negros? The Spaniards, right? Who were the Spaniards? The dog people from the Canary Islands that the Dirty Moors was using against the other ones as the dogs of war. So says the book, the dogs of God. Concept of the self-blood sacrifice to the feathered serpent known as Quetzalcoatl, the Aztecs Kukulkan. So that's KKK. See that? That's KKK. To the Maya is rooted in the Mesoamerican belief that the gods sacrificed their own blood to create humanity. In return, humans, especially elites and priests, were expected to perform auto-sacrifice, self-bloodletting to nourish the gods. So they want you to believe that this is a mestizo Mexican in all black, and he was out here killing himself, right? Sacrifice in to self-emulate and stab and kill himself, so that way he could appease the gods. These are people who had a map of the circumnavigation of the world. These are people who had observatories that could tell the future thousands of years before it happened. These are the people who chose a dying star as the central point of their culture and was able to accurately depict the procession of equinoxes for longer than they could even remember. And you mean to tell me that these people at the same time were so savage? Yes, the book Dogs of God by James Reston. Exactly. That these people didn't know the difference between what was real and what wasn't. This is what I mean about always getting our history from people, from books like Philip McGraw-Hill in these books. That was all given to us by an Israeli spy. All these institutions was run by spies. You understand? And disinformation agents. And we're regurgitating this to each other like it's gospel, like it's true. Like what their version of it is true. Because the Smithsonian said it is true. And all the Smithsonian ever did was find real artifacts, real books, and throw them in the water. real artifacts, real history, real, and just suppress it. Lock it up in books, lock it up in places where nobody could see it. And we just regurgitate it. We just go along with it. We online arguing with people who they own people right now. They calling themselves indigenous and the First Nations and this and that, and all them people getting deported. They running up in them reservations, in them reservations that a lot of them been being paid by the cartels, the human traffic people, even they own people, to human traffic people and do all of that, and they getting deported, but you ain't. It's crazy, man. It's like we just lost all elements of like common sense. I don't know. I don't know. We just accepted all of this fake information as true, and then we just go along with it as if it's always been that, and it never was. They all had racial programs, eugenic programs. In Argentina, it was called Blackamiento. In Brazil, it was called Rencandao. In Mexico, it was called La Raza, right? The race, right? And they all have the same issue. They all had the same agenda. Get rid of all of the melanated people that was already from here so we can have the country to ourselves. And then only allow the dark skin to marry the light skin and so forth and so on. That's Yakub in a nutshell. A map of all the battles fought around the world in the last 4,000 years. It's another brother on Facebook. I believe his name is Steph September. His joint is dope too. He be going in. And the majority of all of those wars all fostered around this place. Look at this place. They all come from here. They all coming from Europa. That was the ice box. See, 18th century illustration of the Pardo officer on the right. So these are the people in the military. These are the people being imported in by the elite to work for them by proxy. And then in that, they started the breakdown. See the pardo in the middle, which is where, if we were looking at the crest, this is where the heart would be, right? Or the fez would be. See? And so this is the plan. Get rid of the original and then bleach all of this out so the European can be the one to rule. This has always been the play. $250 a country been around. They only not been in war for like, I had the numbers on that. Yeah, I think it's funny with the no wells, not the murder or whatever, if it's true or whatever, but this is all related. And whenever I see your boy Ben Crump and what's his name around, I always look at it like there's definitely something up. You know what I'm saying? Whenever them niggas is involved with anything, that means them people is involved with it. That means I can't just take it on face value that it is what they saying it is, because them people only come around when there's a ritual going on. You know what I'm saying? So all I'm saying is energy that these people have been perpetuating don't never die. And it always seem to come back in some form or fashion. You tell me. You tell me what you think. Let me show you. Yeah, whenever they involved, you tell me. You see a resemblance? Out of the 250 years that America has existed, America has only roughly not been at war for about 15 to 20 of those years. I'll say it again. Out of 250 years that the so-called United States for or from or whatever you want to call it, America has existed, it has spent roughly 15 to 20 years completely free of any military conflict. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? You could look that up for yourself. What does that tell you? And the wars that they've usually fought prior, even with the Civil War, remember, all of these niggas was foreign. All of them people was sent over here on boats to fight you, to fight your ancestors. None of them was from here. So 250 years, again. Now, out of that 250 years, they only not been fighting for 15 to 20 of those years. Do you even remember when those 15 and those 20 years was? Do you Can you even, do you know when that even was? Between what years? Yeah, only 15 to 20. Out of 250 years, the United States has spent roughly 15 to 21 years not at war. That's retarded, man. So between 1796 to 1798, that's 3 years, no fighting. Between 1807 and 1809, that's 3 years, no fighting. Between 1826 and 1827 and 1829 to 1835, that's roughly 9 years compiled in that era. So that's 339, 1897 to 1898, 2 years. 1935 to 1940, 5 years. So all of that together is the only time. You understand? So no more than 5 years between any stretch of time is when these people was fighting is when these niggas been out here shooting, killing one another, or being sent to another country, or having that country come over here and cause problems and shit like that. So like I said, the question is, what happens to the rest of us who not only understand this to such a degree, but understand it enough to be able to actually say or do something about it. Especially now, like I said, that the whole thing has been so compromised that there is nobody coming to help. Yeah, so like I said, the same people who created all of the fake history textbooks, remade the maps, did all of this stuff, these are the same people we going to with their understanding of what happened, right? For us to be able to justify and go along with what they saying. We don't find anything wrong with that. You don't think anything is suspect with that, especially that it's been proven that these books and the whole circumstance that led to the creation of them was established by foreign spies who they've now integrated into the government and have been miseducating the entire American populace for the past 80 plus years. Out of that 80 years, all of us alive now has never seen a time that these people ain't been in some sort of war somewhere around the planet. And these same people is still trying to get us to go along with the idea that we are some sort of sub race, that we are some sort of sub race or sub people that don't have our own identity. Yet and still, they don't go to nobody in Brazil and force them to be African. They don't go to nobody in Portugal. They don't go to nobody in India. Nobody in anywhere else in the world. Nobody even in the Caribbean. When the Caribbean nations tried to join the African Union denied them. Isn't that crazy? Think about that. Yes, indeed. Smedley D. Butler said that. He was quoted for saying war is a racket. That's right. And what are rackets used for? To knock balls between two sides back and forth until somebody racket don't hit the ball. Right? Right? So it's another tool, it's another scam, it's another lie, it's another false door. So that's what I'm saying, Moors. Just one translation talking about negro this, negro that. But then at the same token, they not showing us nothing. The word negro, as the Spaniards and them started using it, was a way to denationalize the Moors that they was at war with. And and then they brought that same word over here to now apply to us, right? And then we just adopted it. We just used it because we didn't have enough nationality as Americans to do that. But how could we? Because we was all still prisoners of war like we are now. But the war been going on so long against us, we don't even remember that we was in it. We don't even accept that. We accept that we came over here on boats more than we accept the fact that we're still basically the descendants of those prisoners of war who were able to still maintain aspects of the country. It's a scam, man. And we the only ones not in on it. So if you're not in any secret fraternity, any secret society, if you're not in none of that, you are the enemy of the ones that are. But the problem is this enemy is in your family. It's in your community. It's all around you. And you would never know until it's too late. That's the problem with the whole cipher. You know what I'm saying? You don't know until they decide that it's time for you to know. The way I know it was rigged too was I was watching this movie last night with the Queen on Netflix with Kevin Hart, and then out of nowhere, who's in it? This nigga Cat Williams. And then they fighting in the movie. And as they're fighting, they knock Cat Williams knocks this dude into a wall that has a crest with two swords on it. And then he picks up one of the crests with one of the swords and is about to duel with Cat Williams. I'm like, oh, okay, so they cool now. So it's all good now with these two. The roast done went down, so now it's acceptable that they now can do movies and stuff together after all that shit that this nigga Cat was talking. That's when I knew, B. It's like, oh, okay, this is some other shit. This is some other shit now. They basically done brought us through the whole ritual. Okay, I see where it is now. I see where we going. It's all acceptable now. So now they're showing us, okay, we on the same side now. See, the joke's on you. That's like Future. After setting off the whole shit on Drake, he wound up being cool with him at the end. Wound up being cool with him at the end. While everybody else is now assed out, can't get no features, can't do nothing. That's why you don't go into no other man beef, man. That's why you stick to your own. You got your opinion, you stand on it, keep it moving. Don't go there trying to be somebody else's friend. Pick up somebody else's battle. You don't got to do all of that. So I thought that was crazy. But then when I looked at the whole cipher, I was like, oh, okay, so this is just a grand ritual, what they doing with this. Look. Peep it. Y'all don't think that's wild? That there's something ill with this? The timing of this right now? I thought it was strange. You know what I'm saying? Big up to my brother also on Facebook, Steve Amorica Bay. Stefan Amorica Bay. He did a post about this too. Isn't that bugged out? I'm saying just with the timing. We don't see nothing wild with this, and that's what I mean with these people. Like they just be using shit, circumstances, and we supposed to just, I don't know, just accept like, okay, this is what it is. They're all players. They all are working with the same agenda. We are the fools to believe that everybody, that there's still people with integrity and this, and that. Not if they in the mainstream accept it like that. Nah. They can't leave nothing to chance. They can't leave it to chance like that. So I just thought this was wild. You know? Especially with everything that's happening. And when you look at this show, there's a lot of themes in it that may or may not be giving you clues as to what was also going on with that. Now, what's interesting is that the number 72 in gematria, right, goes and rests in Chesed, which again represents the Sephiroth of mercy in the Kabbalah that we showed earlier. That's the state of mercy. Let me pull it up. Let me see. So again, the numbers on this is just crazy. So I just feel like the whole thing is something else that we supposed to. This is the modern day Tamar Rice. You know what I'm saying? Tasha Jenkins, who may or may not be Sukiana. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't really be believing it like that anymore. I just be seeing too much of the same stuff playing out. Unfortunately. See, 72 is Hakma, which is the heart. And directly connects to the 72-fold name of God, which is the Shem Ham Forash, right? Which is like another one of those tetragrammaton ways of saying Yad He Wad He. You see what I'm saying? And he was a Libra. You know what I'm saying? Oh, wait. Yeah. Yeah. On the 27th of September, I believe. Which is what? 72, right? Right? Y'all don't think that's ill? He born, allegedly, on September 27th. But then they come out with 72 hours. 72, 27. That's all the Shem Hama Forash, Yad Ha Wad He, right? And they come out with the joint 2 days before the 2 days before the 27th. You don't see what they doing? Like it's obvious at this point, man. It's obvious at this point, bro. I'm sorry, I just don't believe it. Like, come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. They running the numbers. What did that nigga say? Men lie, women lie, men don't. I mean, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Didn't he say that? Until it applied to him. Anybody have any questions? Let me see something. Hold up. Nolan, excuse me. His name was Nolan, allegedly. It's real funny. And then this happened on the 4th, allegedly. Where is it? I can't find the thing now. What's that? And then Christian Nolan, right, comes out with the Odyssey at the same time. So it's like when you look it up, all of these different Nolans come up. Like, it's really wild how they really freak this to help move all of their agendas at one point. And that's crazy. Then there's another side I looked up. They saying that his birthday was August 19th. So they got two different birth dates for this thing. It's just not cool, man. It's just not cool how these things be happening, how they be using our people, man. It's really, really whack. I'm really tired of this shit. Really. And that's crazy because Hakma, okay, let's say if it is the 19th, August 19th, that's wild because that's like right before Leo ends. And Hakma, which is the sign of mercy and tenderness, that represents the heart. And Leo is what? It's the heart. Oh God, I'm just so tired of these people, man. Just tired, yo. It's just whack. Anybody have any questions? I did a whole thing on the Odyssey in the last video. If you check it out, I also talked about it on Brother Rich show the other day. But essentially, it's another version of them striving to use the new quota system to be able to push the agenda. Having the whole thing revolve around a trans man who gets sacrificed in the first 2 minutes of the film. Just wow. It's just wow. And it's basically a paint by numbers version of how to use the new depreciated Oscar system to get an award. Because so long as you got all of the check boxes of all of the racial quotas in it, you basically gonna get the award. So he gonna get it because he checked all the boxes. Gay man, check. Trans man, check. Black woman, check. Jewish man, check. Like everybody but a Greek. Indian man, check. You got everybody in it but a Greek. It's crazy. Anybody else have any questions? So yeah, so it was just another bastardized story of them again rewriting history to be able to fit some fake agenda that don't really exist. In my opinion, it really wasn't a good movie at all. Like I said, Kingdom of Heaven in these movies was way better than that. Yeah. Way. So I wouldn't pay to see that. I would see it however you could see it without giving no bread up, if possible. And like I said, it's Christopher Nolan. This nigga's name was Nolan. Like it's just He was on the sea, on the boat with the human trafficking. Like, go watch the 72 joints and see all the references back to what happened with this guy. So if you haven't already, please check out www.cordobaorganics.com. If you haven't subscribed already to the ADOT app, you can get it on Apple and Google Play. Definitely appreciate it. Yeah, like I said, I checked. He got 2 different birthdays. One in June 27th, and then the other one said August 19th or something. So I guess whichever one you go with is whatever one it is. You know what I mean? Which is crazy. It's crazy work, yo. How they have shit just out in the open like that. It's wild. It's wild to me. But, whatever. This is what the people are going to accept. So that's what they're going to keep doing. Also, if you haven't already, please check out www.aseerdugateers.com. If anybody wants to send any donations so we can start doing more than one video a week. There's just so much stuff happening in real life. I gotta, make it worth it. And we don't have, like I said, we don't have no sponsors other than y'all. So every little bit helps, Anyone else? Cool, man. I really appreciate it. So if you guys want to hit me up about anything, consultations, bookings, lectures, anything like that, hit me up. houseofel@hotmail.com. I think the country should be free enough to make its own choices, whether it be secular or whatever. I just think that people don't exercise their own voice or choice in anything. They just tend to go along with what everybody else wants them to do, which is anti-American. You know what I'm saying? That's not how it's supposed to happen. We always supposed to have our own opinion and be able to express that however we want, whether we like it, what the other person's saying or not. You know what I'm saying? That's the reason why we like living here. because you get to say and basically do what you want, but they really are striving to turn the screws slow and slow enough to get everybody to kind of think the same, so that way it makes it easier to control everybody, put everybody in 15-minute cities, all of this bullshit that nobody wants. So the only way we don't do that is if we step up and don't do that. You know what I'm saying? It's the only way it don't work, is if we actually stand up and make it not work. Anybody else? Indeed. Pride always cometh before the fall. Yes, it is a double-edged sword. However, it's better to have the sword in your hand than at your throat. You know? So let's stand up for what's right. Let's support each other as best as we can. You know what I mean? Honest to everybody for the support, man. I really, really got love for everybody, man. I really appreciate the support, as does the Queen. So if anybody else wants to hit me up, you can do so at houseofel@hotmail.com. And again, I thank you guys for coming through and all the support. Hit me up at houseofel@hotmail.com. Once again, Proconima Laudibus Nobilis Maximus, Pax et Amor. And I really, again, appreciate everybody's opinion and everybody's understanding. All of us together make the tapestry that can become so thick that it binds up an elephant, you know what I mean? Or a donkey. You dig? So, long live the Empire, Moors. Have a great week. Islam.